everybody. Welcome back to the OffBeat Sports Podcast presented by. As today we are joined by Massachusetts native, former NHL player, and current Pittsburgh Penguins head coach Mike Sullivan. Throughout his playing career, Mike played for the San Jose Sharks, Calgary Flames, Boston Bruins, and the Phoenix Coyotes. He has coached many teams throughout the league and was hired midway through the season of 2015 and became the third coach in NHL history to win a Stanley Cup after a midseason coaching change. He then went on to win the Stanley Cup the next season, becoming the first Penguins head coach to win back-to-back Stanley Cups. He was also recently named the head coach of the USA men's hockey team for the 2022 Olympics. Thanks for joining us today, Mike.
Sure, it's my pleasure.
So just starting off with your playing career. So the average person would probably never understand what it's like, but how did it feel to be selected in the NHL draft by the Rangers?
Well, it's a big thrill. Anytime, as a young player, you aspire to play in the NHL someday. And I think, growing up in the Boston area, I was always watching the Bruins. I was a big Bruins fan. I was a big college hockey fan, going to the Bean Pots every year when I was a kid with my older brother and my dad. And so I think when you actually get drafted, it becomes somewhat of a reality, right? It's a whole lot closer. It's tangible. And so it just gives you that inspiration that, hey, this might actually be possible. And so that was really the first real inclination for me that I might have a shot at this. So it was an exciting time for me and my family. As we all know, getting drafted and playing in the NHL are two different things. But that was a whole lot of fun for us.
So, Coach, you played in the NHL for a long time, 10 plus years. I was wondering if you had any standout moments from your playing career that still resonate with you to this day.
Oh, I had lots of great moments. I was very fortunate to play with some real good players, real good teammates. I played for some real good coaches. I think one moment that stands out when I was playing for the Calgary Flames one year, I got a hat trick in the playoffs. And for someone that, like myself, that really wasn't known for his offensive prowess at the NHL level, that was a big thrill for me. But there were so many moments that was so great. I love the opportunity I had to play one season for the Boston Bruins. Pat Burns was the coach. Ray Bourque was the captain at the time, and Joe Thornton was a rookie that year. Joe Thornton and Sergei Samsonov, PJ Axelson, Hal Gill, they were all rookies on that team. So playing that one season for the Bruins as a hometown kid was a huge thrill for me. But there are so many moments. It's hard to mention all of them, but those are just two things that jump out at me.
You mentioned that you were a huge Bruins fan growing up, and so we were wondering, what was it like to live out a dream and be able to coach the Boston Bruins to a winning record?
Well, it was the thrill of a lifetime to coach the Bruins. I was a young coach at the time. I was not far removed from playing. I had coached one season for the Providence Bruins at the American League level. So I was a real young coach at the time, but it was such a thrill to be able to stand behind the bench and coach my hometown team, a team that I was such a huge fan of growing up and watched my whole lifetime. So it was a huge thrill for me.
So you were hired halfway through the 2015 season. So what was your favorite moments from that kind of season where you started coaching in the AHL and then you finished a Stanley Cup champion? What would you say some of your favorite moments from that season were?
Well, there was a lot of them. It was when I got the call from Jim Rutherford, the general manager of the Penguins, when he asked me to be the head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins. It was certainly it was an honor and a thrill for me to receive that phone call. I remember driving from Wilkes-Barre to Pittsburgh and just driving in the car. It's about a 4.5 hour ride, and there were so many thoughts going through my mind. And at the time, the Penguins were a talented team on paper, but were underachieving. They were on the outside looking in. They were not a playoff team at the time. And their power play, I think, was like 29th in the league. And, Crosby was struggling offensively. Malkin was struggling. And so it was not an easy circumstance to walk into. But it was a thrill for me. It was a great challenge. I was excited and scared to death all in the same breath. I remember walking in, having that first conversation with the team the next morning, and I walked into the locker room, and I looked around the room, and as you can imagine, and I think you guys are well aware of the roster that's in Pittsburgh, that team that won the Stanley Cup, and some of the star power that's in that room. That can be an intimidating dressing room to walk into. But as you know, I said to the players that morning, I said, I look around this room, I see so much talent. I have so much respect for what all of the players have accomplished to this point in their careers, especially from an individual standpoint, with leading scorers in the league and scoring titles and things of that nature. I said, but great players don't win Stanley Cups. Great teams win Stanley Cups. And our challenge from here moving forward is going to be to become a great team. And that was kind of the marching orders that I try to give our team that year. And we worked hard at it. It was a daily endeavor. And I remember I think we lost the first 4 games that I was behind the bench. Excuse me. And it was a challenge, but we slowly but surely dug ourselves out of the hole that we were in. We started to climb in the standings. We started to become a team in the true sense of the word. I think we went 18-2 in the last 20 games of that season. And that was really the evidence I think that we provided for ourselves going into the playoffs, that, hey, we're a real good team here. We got a chance to win a Stanley Cup. And we were a dominant team that year in the Stanley Cup. That was the most fun I've ever had as a coach. Just standing behind the bench. At that point, our team was on autopilot. We just had to open the gate and watch the guys go out and compete. And it was just so much fun going through that journey with the players and finally winning the Stanley Cup and at the end of that year in San Jose. So I've been associated with this league as a player and a coach for 30 plus years, and I had never got close to winning a Stanley Cup. And the closest I got, I think, to that point was one of the years I was coaching. I was an assistant coach with the New York Rangers, and we were in the conference finals against New Jersey, and we lost in the conference finals. And Jersey ended up playing the LA Kings, and LA ended up eventually winning the Stanley Cup that year. But that's the closest I've ever gotten to winning the Stanley Cup, either as a coach or a player. And so to actually get it done in that particular year was just an amazing experience. It's hard for me to even articulate in words, the emotions that went through my body when we had finally won in the last second, ticked off the clock there in San Jose. But geez, there are so many great moments from that year. We don't have enough time on your podcast, I think, to mention them all, but it was certainly a whole lot of fun to be part of that experience.
So you mentioned Sidney Crosby. So obviously he's considered one of the greatest hockey players of all time. What's it like coaching a guy like that? What's your relationship with him like? I know it must be kind of cool to be able to work with a guy like that.
Yeah, it's really cool. He's Sid's a great guy. Him and I have really developed a great relationship over the years. I'm going into year 7 here as the coach in Pittsburgh. So we've been together for a long time now. Obviously, you guys had mentioned that we won twice. The first 2 years we won back to back together. And I think when you go through those types of experiences, it galvanizes relationships. And I think my relationship with Sid certainly was no different. So we have a real good relationship. It certainly is an honor to coach him. He's he's most definitely the most driven athlete that I've ever been around in any sport. And I've said that publicly on a number of occasions. But he is just such a driven athlete. There isn't a day that goes by that he's not working on some aspect of his game. He's just totally invested in the sport, and he's totally invested in the Penguins and trying to help us win. He's the first guy on the ice in practice. He's the last guy off the ice in practice every day. He's really invested in the video meetings. He loves talking hockey. And so it really is a privilege to watch him. You know, when I was coaching against him all those years, when I was in New York and on some of the other teams that I had coached on, and I was coaching against him, I always appreciated how good of a player he was. But when you actually get to watch him every day, and you watch the sacrifices he makes and the commitment he makes to be the best, he has God-given ability. There's no doubt, but he's not the best player in the game by accident. He works at it every day. He's the most driven guy I've ever been around, and it's inspiring. He's the standard bearer here in Pittsburgh, and as the head coach, he certainly makes my job a whole lot easier when I'm trying to hold the players accountable to a certain standard, from a work ethic standpoint, from an execution standpoint, just from an investment standpoint. You know, he sets the bar for us, and I just can't say enough about him and what he goes through every day to try to be the best and try to help this Penguins team win. But you know, it's certainly it's an honor to be his coach. It's an honor to work with him. I really value the relationship that we've built over the years, and I look forward to continuing to work with him here this season coming up.
So, as the final seconds ticked off the clock in Game 6 of that first Stanley Cup back in 2016 against the Sharks, what was it like, those initial moments that when you guys finally realized you won that Stanley Cup, you had climbed that mountain? What was it like, that your first emotions being able to celebrate with the team?
It's really hard to articulate it in words. You know, I remember the coaching staff was in a big group hug on the bench. Excuse me. The players had gone over the boards, and you know, there was a big pile down by our goaltender. And I remember just saying to Rick Tocchet, I said, you know, I remember saying to him, I can't believe we did it. We actually did it, you know. And when we kind of sat in the against the boards in the corner and just watched the players, you know, when they were raising the Stanley Cups over their heads and carrying the Stanley Cup around the ice. And I remember just thinking to myself how grateful I was for the opportunity that I was given here in Pittsburgh. Not just to be the coach, but to coach this group of players, and how grateful I was to the players for the sacrifices that they made for us to win the Stanley Cup. It is without a doubt the most difficult trophy in sports to win. You've got to go through, you know, 4 grueling 7-game series. You know, you're essentially playing a 30th schedule to win the Stanley Cup in the postseason, and it's a war of attrition in so many ways. It's the most physical hockey that you'll ever play. It's the most intense, emotional hockey that you'll ever play, and the emotional highs and lows that teams go through. I think it is unsurpassed in any other sport. That's my opinion. You know, maybe I'm biased because obviously I'm competing in hockey, but it's without a doubt one of the most difficult trophies in sports to win. And I just remember being grateful, just so grateful for the opportunity that I was given to coach this group of players.
So what would you say? So you guys repeated the next year. So what would you say the hardest part of getting through that process of repeating as Stanley Cup champs?
The biggest challenge that we went through was trying to get the guys to reinvest. And it's such a short turnaround when you win the Stanley Cup. I think our last game was on like June 12th that year. We had guys coming into training camp that were still recovering from injuries from the Stanley Cup from the prior year. And so trying to get guys to reinvest, and you know, you're starting from scratch all over again. And so I had the fortune of building a relationship with Scotty Bowman one of the years I worked with the Chicago Blackhawks in their development department when I was in between coaching jobs, and he was the last coach to repeat. And so I called him that summer and I asked him, you know, what are the challenges here? What do I have to look out for? What do I need to be proactive as the coach? And you know, one of the things he said to me was that, you know, there's a tendency to want to let your foot off the gas when you go into training camp, because because you had just won and the players had gone through so much. And he encouraged me not to do so, to put that Stanley Cup year behind us and to just be a forward-thinking group and to put our pedal right back on the gas. And so we did as a coaching staff, and we were hard on the players in training camp that next year. And I think it was a little bit of a shock to our players because we were as hard as we were and as demanding as we were, because they were still thinking about and talking about winning the Stanley Cup a few weeks prior. So the hardest part was just probably the first 30 to 40 games of the year, because, when you're still so far away from the Stanley Cup playoffs. But as I said to the players on day one of training camp, you can't win the Stanley Cup in October, but you can lose it if you're not careful. And we had to make sure that we take care of business in the early parts of the season, so we give ourselves the opportunity to compete for it again. And that was the biggest challenge, was just trying to get guys to reinvest. And those first 30 games, we were up and down, and it was a bit of a challenge trying to get guys to engage each and every night to compete and to make sure that we stayed competitive in the win-loss column. And so fortunately for us, we did. We have a talented group, and we were able to find ways to stay competitive. But as we got closer to the playoffs, we could feel our team start to come again, like they were excited again about competing for it. And I got to tell you, when you finally win and you raise the Stanley Cup over your head, it gives you a feeling like you will do anything to do it all over again, because it's the greatest feeling in the world. And so, and I think our players felt the same way. So we were so driven that the end of the season to hold up our Stanley Cup from the year before. And everybody that year was saying that we couldn't do it, and that it's so hard to win once, never mind twice. And I kept raising that challenge to our players all year long. Everybody's, all the experts are saying we can't. And I'm asking the question, why not? Why not us? Why can't we? We should be able to write our own story here. And so, but I could feel the team coming the last 20 games of the year. And, as we got closer and closer to the Stanley Cup playoffs, and then once the playoffs got there, I could just feel the engagement of especially our star players. They were so driven to do it all over again. And fortunately for us, we were able to do it.
So you were recently named, as everyone knows, the head coach for the 2022 Olympics for Team USA men's hockey. So what are you looking forward to most, being able to coach that team in the Olympics, full of the best American players in the NHL in the Olympics?
Well, the Olympics is a whole different endeavor, right? It's a volunteer basis. Everybody's going over there to represent your nation. It's the honor of a lifetime. That's the way I look at it. When Stan Bowman called me in the summertime and he asked me to be the head coach and represent the United States, that's what I told him. I said, I was at a loss for words. I said, I'm humbled and I'm honored. It's the honor of a lifetime to represent your nation, to wear the red, white, and blue is such a unique feeling. And I've had the privilege of representing the United States, both as a player and a coach, in different international tournaments. Never as a head coach have I had the opportunity to represent the United States at the Olympics. I had the privilege of being an assistant coach at the Olympics in Torino in 2006, I think it was. Peter Laviolette was the head coach that year, but I've never had the opportunity to be the head coach. And so this is the honor of a lifetime for me. I'm so excited about standing behind the bench with the United States' very best players, and I'm excited about the talent pool that we have. When you look at the players that we have to choose from to put an Olympic team together for the United States, we've got some of the most dynamic players in hockey. Guys like Austin Matthews and Jack Eichel, and I could go on and on. It's so exciting for me to look at the talent pool that we have. And I think it's as deep as it's been in a long time. And I think that speaks volumes for American hockey and how far hockey has come in the United States. And so to have the opportunity to be the head coach and compete in Beijing here this February coming up. I'm so excited. I can't wait for the opportunity to compete with what inevitably we believe will become a really strong American team.
Yeah, so we mentioned earlier, but you grew up in Massachusetts. What would you say your favorite part of growing up in Massachusetts was, and is there anything that living in Mass has helped you with throughout your career?
Oh, sure. There's lots of things. I think the first thing is Massachusetts has always been one of the hockey hotbeds of the United States. There's competitive hockey. You don't have to drive very far. You can drive 10 minutes. You can go from Marshfield, where I grew up, to Hingham and have a competitive game. And so there's a lot of really good players that participate in hockey in Massachusetts, and that's how it was when I grew up. We had competitive games on the ponds when I was growing up. So I remember playing for Marshfield youth hockey. I remember playing for the Plymouth County All Stars. I remember competing at BC High when I played in high school, and playing in the old Boston Garden against Catholic Memorial, and I remember playing at Boston University, which was a thrill of a lifetime for me, and competing in the Bean Pots. I was fortunate to win a couple of Bean Pots when I was there at BU, and played in the Final Four in my senior year when I was the captain at BU in 1990, which seems like a million years ago for you guys, but it seems like yesterday for me. And so, Massachusetts has such deep roots with respect to hockey, and I think it's just a relevant sport, and everybody plays it. And so, I think for those of us that had the fortune of growing up in Massachusetts, we were given a bit of a competitive advantage. And so, there's been, when you look at my generation and some of the players that came out of Massachusetts, it's impressive. Tony Amonte and Jeremy Roenick and Joe Sacco and Sean McEachern, and I could go on and on. Keith Kachuk, Billy Guerin. There's so many great players that came out of the Boston area and competed at the highest levels. It's just impressive. And so I have so many fond memories at all the different respective levels when I participated in the game. Some of my best friends to this day are the my teammates when I grew up, playing for the Plymouth County All Stars and playing for BC High and BU for that matter. So those are my very best friends to this day, and that's what Massachusetts means to me.
So that's all we got. So it just about wraps up our episode. So thank you to Mike Sullivan for taking the time to do this interview with us. We really appreciate it.
Sure, it's my pleasure, guys.
All right. Well, thank everyone for listening. See you next time.